At first, the child thought it was just a dream. The room was always quiet at night, save for the distant hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the occasional creak of the old wooden house settling into the earth. The glow in the dark stars on the ceiling barely gave off any light, and his night light, plugged into the far corner of the room, cast strange, elongated shadows on the walls. It started with a feeling, a cold sensation against his ankle as he lay curled up under his blankets, his small body pressed against the wall. He didn't think much of it at first. The blanket must have slipped off. He pulled it up, tucking himself in tightly, and squeezed his eyes shut. Then came the pressure. Not much, just the faintest weight against his leg, like the touch of a feather or a light tap from a hand. The sensation sent a shiver up his spine, and his breath caught in his throat. He lay frozen, his little fingers clutching at the sheets. It was nothing, just his imagination. That's what his parents always told him when he came running into their bedroom, wide-eyed and trembling. Nothing's there, sweetheart. Just a bad dream. But the feeling stayed with him even after he convinced himself to sleep. The lingering, icy touch against his skin. And then, the next night, the hands came. The moment his parents tucked him in and turned off the light, he felt it. A presence. Something waiting, watching. The air under his bed felt wrong, heavier somehow, thick with something unseen. He turned to face the wall, pulling the blankets over his head, his heart hammering. Hours passed like this. Then the hand emerged. It came slowly, almost hesitantly, as though testing its boundaries. The fingers were long, too long, and moved with a deliberate slowness, brushing against the exposed skin of his ankle. He jerked his leg away, curling into himself. The hand did not retreat. It slid further, stretching from the darkness beneath the bed, reaching. Another hand followed, and then another, pale and twisted, their fingers flexing, twitching. He couldn't breathe. The bed creaked slightly under his weight as he shifted, trying not to move too quickly, too suddenly. If he made a sound, if he moved too fast, would they grab him? Would they pull him down? His throat closed up. He wanted to scream for his parents. He wanted to leap from his bed and run, but he couldn't. The hands were there, waiting, watching. His tiny fingers trembled as he inched them toward his nightlight, a small source of comfort in the darkness. If he could just turn it off and on again, maybe the sudden change in light would make them disappear, just like in the movies. The hands stopped, frozen, still. And then, as though they sensed his plan, they retracted, not with a sudden jerk, but slowly, deliberately, dragging themselves back into the blackness beneath his bed. The air felt cold and wrong, as if the room itself had exhaled something unnatural. He didn't move. He couldn't. Morning eventually came, sunlight spilling into his room, washing away the shadows. The fear felt distant then, like something imagined, a bad dream, a trick of the light. But the next night, they came again, and the next, and the next. Each time, the hands grew bolder. They reached further, moved quicker. Some nights, they grasped at the edge of the mattress, their long fingers curling around the fabric as if testing their strength. He told his parents. They checked. They knelt down, lifted the blankets, and peered into the dark space beneath his bed. A moment of silence. Then a small, reassuring laugh. "Nothing's there, sweetheart. Just shadows. Just your imagination." He didn't argue. They wouldn't believe him. But he knew. And so did the hands. The night stretched long and heavy, each one worse than the last. The hands no longer hesitated. They no longer tested or waited. They knew now. They knew he was afraid. He curled up as small as he could, pressing himself against the wall, trying to make himself less noticeable, less reachable. It didn't matter. They reached for him anyway. The fingers, cold, thin, unnatural, would brush against his blanket, teasing at the fabric, creeping closer with every breath. He tried not to move, not to breathe too loudly. The air felt thick, charged, as though something unseen lurked just beyond the edges of his senses. The darkness beneath his bed felt alive, shifting, breathing in its own awful way. He imagined them down there, waiting, watching, stretching their grotesque limbs toward him. His parents wouldn't listen, even when he pleaded. When his voice trembled with terror, they just smiled gently, smoothed his hair, and told him it was just a bad dream. A child's overactive imagination. They promised to check. They knelt beside his bed, lifted the covers, and peered into the darkness. Nothing. That's what they said every time. Nothing's there. But he saw the way their smiles faltered, how their expressions twitched just slightly as they stared into the void beneath his bed. They didn't see anything. But maybe, just maybe, they felt something. Still, they laughed it off, patted his head, and tucked him in tight. That night, the hands came closer. They slithered over the edge of the mattress, the fingers splaying out, pressing into the fabric. His breath hitched as he felt the weight of them, pressing, testing. He squeezed his eyes shut, heart pounding. If he didn't move, if he didn't acknowledge them, maybe they would go away. But they didn't. A hand gripped his blanket. The fabric tightened, the pressure slight at first, almost playful. Then it jerked, just an inch. He bolted upright. The moment he moved, the hands retreated, disappearing in an instant. The room was silent again. Only the sound of his own ragged breathing filled the air. He couldn't take it anymore. The next morning, he told his parents everything. He begged them to believe him. The hands, the way they moved, the way they touched him. He knew they were real. His mother sighed. His father rubbed his temples. They checked again. This time, his father reached under the bed, sweeping his arm through the empty space, knocking against the wooden floor. He even grabbed a flashlight, shining it into every dark corner. "See," his father said, forcing a smile. "Nothing." But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of something he wasn't saying. That night, his father left the door cracked open. A little more light spilled in from the hallway. His mother kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're safe." He didn't believe her, and neither did the hands. They came later than usual. He thought, hoped, that maybe they wouldn't come at all. But just as his body started to relax, just as his mind drifted toward sleep, they arrived. This time, they didn't stop at just touching the blanket. They reached for him, fingers wrapped around his wrist, cold, strong, unyielding. He let out a strangled gasp, his body going rigid. His other hand shot toward the night light. He flicked it on. The hands vanished. The grip disappeared instantly, and he was left clutching his own wrist, trembling. His skin felt wrong, as if something had lingered, some invisible residue of whatever had been touching him. He didn't sleep after that. He stared at the ceiling until dawn, his nightlight burning bright beside him. When morning finally came, he ran to his parents again, but their patience was wearing thin. "Enough," his father snapped. "No more talk of hands, it's just your imagination. You need to stop." His mother nodded in agreement, but her eyes were tired. That day, he refused to go near his bed. He sat on the floor instead, playing with his toys, keeping as much distance as possible between himself and the thing beneath him. His father grew frustrated. "You're too old for this. There is nothing under your bed." He didn't argue anymore. That night, he decided he wouldn't sleep in his bed. He took his pillow and blanket and curled up on the floor far away from it.
he wasn't on the mattress, the hands wouldn't reach for him. Maybe they wouldn't find him. At first it felt safe. The cold hardwood floor was uncomfortable, but at least he wasn't on the bed. He kept his nightlight up, staring at the bed frame, watching, waiting. Hours passed. Nothing happened. He almost started to believe he was safe. Then something moved. Not from under the bed, from above. He barely had time to react before he heard it. The creaking of the mattress. Something was on his bed. His stomach turned to ice. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move. He just listened as the mattress sagged, as the sheets shifted, as the wooden frame groaned under the unseen weight. It was above him, not below. The realization hit like a punch to the chest. All this time, he had been afraid of what was under the bed. But what if? What if the hands weren't coming from below? What if they had been reaching down? He finally moved. Scrambling to his feet, he bolted for the door. His hand yanked at the doorknob, twisting, pulling. Locked. His father had locked it. For his own good, his father had said, to stop him from wandering the house at night. Sound behind him, not the mattress creaking, not the sheets shifting. His breath hitched, slowly, stiffly.
He turned his head. The bed was empty, but the blankets, they were shifting, moving as though something was beneath them, something crawling its way toward the edge. A lump beneath the covers, small at first, then stretching, growing, the shape twisting, elongating, too many limbs. The blanket slid back, fingers, hands, too many of them. They weren't reaching up from under the bed. They were pulling themselves down toward him. His scream never left his throat. His mind screamed for him to run, but his body refused to move. The hands crawled from beneath the blankets, their movements deliberate, their fingers flexing and twisting unnaturally. They gripped the edge of the bed, pulling something else forward, something that shouldn't exist. A face emerged, not a human face, not even close. It was stretched, its skin too pale, its eyes too wide, like black holes carved into a mask of flesh. Its mouth wrong, too long, its lips curling at the edges into something not quite a smile. It was watching him, not just watching, waiting. It knew he couldn't run. His hands fumbled for the door handle, twisting it, pulling, begging for it to open. The lock held firm, trapping him. A click behind him. The bed frame groaned as something heavier shifted its weight onto it. More hands slithered over the edge, too many fingers, their movements like writhing insects. And then the whispering, not words, not sounds that belonged in this world. It was inside his head, crawling into his thoughts like cold, wet fingers pressing against his brain. It wanted him. It had always wanted him. He was crying now, shaking, pressing himself against the door. The thing rose. It unfolded from the bed, its limbs bending at impossible angles, its two long fingers dragging across the floor. It was closer now, its head tilted, its mouth stretching wider. Those black holes where its eyes should be boring into him. Then it moved. Too fast, too fast. The hands gripped his ankles, pulled. His scream shattered the silence as he was yanked off his feet, his nails clawing at the wooden floor, his body thrashing. No one heard him. Not his mother, not his father, not anyone. The thing dragged him toward the bed, its mouth splitting open too wide, revealing something endless beyond its lips, a void, a place without light, without sound, without escape. The darkness beneath the bed wasn't just darkness. It was a doorway, a hungry, living, breathing doorway, and he was going through it. His fingers clawed at the floorboards, splinters digging into his skin, but the grip on his ankles was stronger. He was slipping, his legs vanishing beneath the bed, the void swallowing him whole. His final desperate thought was not of escape, not of survival. It was the horrifying realization that his parents had been right. There was nothing under the bed, because it was never under the bed at all. It was waiting above, and now it had him.